The Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. We appreciate the patience of both members and the nominees who are conferring with the ranking member on the question of nominations. So we're here today to consider nominations for four very important positions. Ambassador Julieta Valls Noyes to be Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migrations. Ambassador Barbara Leaf to be the Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. Ms. Julianne Smith to be Ambassador to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and Ambassador Denise Bauer to be the Ambassador to France and Monaco. So congratulations on all your nominations. The four of you have a distinguished history of public service. We appreciate your willingness to continue to serve our country. We also appreciate your families because it is a sacrifice as families as well, who are engaged in the service by their support and sometimes travel abroad. So we thank them. Before I continue, I understand that the distinguished senator from Virginia is privileged to make 3 introductions. So I don't get 3 introductions from New Jersey, and I'm the chairman. So in any event, Senator Kane will recognize you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Ish, for scheduling this hearing on 4 such wonderfully qualified nominees. It is my pleasure to introduce 3 of the nominees, 2 from Virginia, 1 from California, who is a very close friend. Denise Campbell Bauer to be Ambassador to France and Monaco. Julieta Noyes to be Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees, and Migration. And Barbara Leaf to be Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. I previously introduced Ambassador Bauer to this committee in 2013 when she was nominated to be ambassador to Belgium. I've had a chance to know Denise and her family now for about 15 years. She had a distinguished career in journalism, nonprofits, and domestic and international politics, but in particular in her service in Belgium, she served at a most challenging time. In March of 2016, Belgium was subject to coordinated terrorist attacks at the same time as France also underwent those attacks. And at that point, Ambassador Bauer, she'll describe, worked very hard to keep Americans safe, to work with our ally Belgium, and even coordinate some activities between Belgium and France. As ambassador to Belgium, she was unanimously confirmed by the Senate. She worked very, very hard on that transatlantic relationship and to advance U.S. policy goals in Europe. And as you know, the U.S. presence in Belgium also includes the NATO and EU missions. And so the Belgian ambassador has a lot of important work in those multilateral efforts. Her on-the-ground experience in the region, leading the implementation of U.S. foreign policy at a challenging time, has demonstrated her ability and would make her very, very fit to serve as our ambassador in France and Monaco. Ambassador Noyes exemplifies the dedication of career Foreign Service officers and their families, many of whom call Virginia home when they are not serving overseas. I've had a chance to see Ambassador Noyes' work up close and personal. I met her in several occasions when she was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Western Europe from 2013 to 2015, and again in Spain when I had the honor, as did the chair of this committee, to serve as honorary chair of the U.S.-Spain Council. Ambassador Noyes has served the country with great skill while raising 3 children together with her husband, who is also a Foreign Service alum, now a retired officer with 29 years of service. 2 of her children wisely attended Virginia universities, University of Virginia and Christopher Newport University. And I would note in particular, Mr. Chair, that in this position, working on important issues of population, refugees, and migration, Julieta has a powerful family experience. She's the daughter of Cuban refugees and would bring that personal passion to the important work of state in this area. Finally, I want to introduce Ambassador Barbara Leaf, another Virginian. I noticed that she's a proud alumni of William and Mary and the University of Virginia, but she's wearing only a William and Mary brooch today and not the UVA brooch. She probably had hoped I wouldn't point that out. But she is a very well-qualified nominee for the position of Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. She comes to the committee with a deep background in Near East and Middle East politics. She was a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and previously served as our ambassador to the UAE and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Arabian Peninsula in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs. This struck me. All of these State Department career folks are wonderful in foreign language proficiencies, but listen to this. Ambassador Leaf speaks Arabic, French, Italian, and Serbo-Croatian. She'll lead the Bureau with integrity and enthusiasm, and I'm proud to introduce this great Virginian to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Senator Kane, for that introduction of all of our distinguished nominees. I know that Senator Shaheen is very happy to see 4 incredibly talented women before the committee. So let me continue now. Briefly, I had a conversation with the ranking member, and I appreciate his attention to the seriousness of the situation we have on nominees in the committee. We have over 70 nominees pending before the committee, and we have over 50 completed files. So I look forward to working with the ranking member so that we can continue to expedite those nominees in the days ahead. Okay. I am now being told that Senator Shaheen has also got an introduction to make. So, Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Risch. I am very honored to be able to join Senator Kane in doing introductions this morning, particularly to be able to introduce Julie Smith, President Biden's nominee to be ambassador to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. As chair of the Subcommittee on Europe and Regional Security Cooperation and co-chair of the Senate NATO Observer Group, like other members of this committee, I understand very clearly the importance of Ms. Smith's experience and expertise in what she will bring to this role. Julie's resume and background is a testament to her commitment to the Transatlantic Alliance. Her career has spanned 25 years crossing the pond to work on transatlantic security issues both in and out of government. She's worked at both the Pentagon and the White House and has worked at some of America's most esteemed think tanks, including the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the German Marshall Fund, and the Center for a New American Security. And Julie, of course, is no stranger to this committee. She testified in 2017 here on the U.S.-Russia bilateral relationship, and her expertise, drawn from many years researching transatlantic relations, has benefited those in and out of government. She spent the last 3 years researching and writing on Europe's evolving attitudes and vulnerabilities as they relate to China, a subject that we all know very well on this committee. Julie's also worked to bring foreign policy to audiences outside the Beltway, most recently launching a program called Across the Pond in the Field to bring Europeans to 12 U.S. cities to talk to Americans about foreign policy. Her accolades and accomplishments alone make her worthy of confirmation, but I also want to highlight Julie's leadership as a mentor to women in the national security space. And yes, Mr. Chairman, I was very excited to see 4 women on the dais this morning who have been nominated to be ambassadors. And Julie has been involved for a long time in mentoring women. She co-founded the Leadership Council for Women in National Security to provide a support network for women in a predominantly male space. And because of her leadership, there are a number of women in Washington who proudly call themselves mentees of Julie. And I'm also pleased to recognize Julie's husband, David, who's here with her this morning, and your older son, Liam, who is also here. As a mother, her family has kept her on her toes. And I can appreciate that because I know that as a working mom, you have to juggle a lot of things, which is really important to the world of diplomacy. So for all of these reasons, I'm very happy to have Julie's nomination before this committee. I'm sure that my colleagues will appreciate her responses, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we do have an agreement to move forward these nominees. It's critical to ensure that American foreign policy can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. So let me just briefly reference the positions that these nominees are being nominated for. Ambassador Valls Noyes, congratulations on your nomination. You bring a distinguished record of diplomatic and management experience to the role, including your most recent assignments leading the Foreign Service Institute and serving as U.S. Ambassador to Croatia. As you know, the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration is responsible for addressing some of the most pressing global challenges we have today. According to the United Nations, at the beginning of the year, there will be more than 82 million forcibly displaced people in the world, of whom 26.4 million are refugees. No doubt that number has only grown and will continue to grow. From the global forced migration crisis to the humanitarian emergencies in Venezuela, Ethiopia, Syria, and Afghanistan, the United States must lead in addressing the acute needs that exist today and the long-term drivers of these crises. The task before you is immense, and I recommend, if you are confirmed, that you develop strong consultative relationships with the many refugee and resettlement organizations that have deep expertise in this area, and I'm confident they would welcome your engagement. Let me say a few words specifically about Afghanistan and the dire humanitarian crisis there. Nearly half of the entire population, more than 18 million people, need humanitarian assistance right now. More than 4 million Afghans are internally displaced, and the outgoing instability and violence may very well produce large flows of refugees into neighboring countries in the coming months, which would create a great deal of instability. The PRM Bureau will be at the helm of the U.S. response to this crisis, and your leadership will be essential to ensuring that our response meets the moment. Ambassador Leif, welcome back to the committee. I'm pleased that you stopped by our office to have a little bit of a tour of the region. I'm hopeful that we can get you quickly in place so the Bureau and the whole department can benefit from your decades of experience. Despite repeated efforts from multiple administrations to pivot to great power competition, the Middle East and North Africa remain central focal points of challenges, and I believe some opportunities for the United States. As you know, Iran has continued to advance its nuclear program, and I believe the United States must pursue all options to find a negotiated deal that addresses not just Iran's nuclear program, but also its support for terrorism and its ballistic missile activity. Lebanon is on the brink of collapse. Tunisia, once a bastion of hope for people all over the region, is experiencing a troubling backslide from the democratic reforms, and I have yet to understand exactly what the administration's plan is for Syria. As Iraq heads towards elections, we have an opportunity with leadership and Iraqis who want a brighter future. And I am hopeful that more countries across the region will build on the historic diplomatic relations between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain in the Abraham Accords. Overall, I believe we need to reinvigorate our diplomatic presence and outreach in the region in which our policy has slowly become more and more militarized. And I trust that you're up to that task. Ms. Smith, we welcome your nomination. Glad that the President selected you for this critical post. During his administration, President Trump repeatedly attacked NATO and our allies. This unfortunately drew criticism from both sides of the aisle in the Senate, evidence that bipartisan support for the alliance is strong. President Biden's visit to NATO earlier this year helped to repair ties, but work remains to be done to ensure that our allies understand that the United States is steadfast in its support for the alliance. You have an exemplary background, experience, intellect, and judgment to represent the United States at NATO, and I hope that we can get you out there as soon as possible. There are many important conversations happening in Brussels right now about the future of NATO, what its mission will be in the new world in which we live, and we need an ambassador there as soon as possible. Ambassador Bauer, I'm pleased to see you again before the committee. I appreciated your leadership of the embassy team in Belgium, especially during the 2016 Brussels terrorist attack in which Americans were killed and injured. It's critical that the United States has an experienced ambassador in Paris, where we have so many issues to advance with their government, from counterterrorism in the Sahel to support for allied democracies in the Eastern Mediterranean. France is also critical to our policy objectives in Iran and Russia, and I've appreciated the French foreign minister and ambassador's engagement with the Senate on these issues. So we look forward to hearing your goals of how we can deepen our oldest diplomatic relationship even further. So let me close with saying that the four of you have immense challenges ahead. I'm confident that your experience can serve our country well as you take on new responsibilities if confirmed. And we look forward to each of your testimonies. Let me turn to the distinguished ranking member, Senator Risch, for his opening remark.